Welcome to the Chuck Shoot Podcast. My guest today is Robin Wilson, singer of the band The Gin Blossoms. The Gin Blossoms came onto the scene in the early 90s. I do remember seeing a commercial for them repeatedly, and they kept playing that song, Hey Jealousy, during the commercial, and it was so catchy that I went out and bought the cassette single because I couldn't download music then. I wasn't sure if I should pull the trigger on the full album because I didn't know if it'd be any good, but the album ended up having not only Hey Jealousy, but 4 other singles that charted. And then they had a hit from the Empire Records soundtrack. They had songs on Congratulations, I'm Sorry, their follow-up album. They ended up having 4 total top 40 hits, 9 charted hits from other different charts, appearances on Leno and Letterman, SNL. They had a Grammy nomination. They toured the world. They had a lot of success. But of course, there were some bumps along the way. And we'll tell the whole story and we'll get Robin's take on this. Plus, we'll talk about some of his other projects like with the Gas Giants, Poppin Wheelies, and the Smithereens. But of course, you know, he's most known for his work as the singer of the Gin Blossoms. And who doesn't love the Gin Blossoms? I've never met anyone who wasn't at least a casual fan. And I tried to make this interview entertaining for both the casual fan who may not know their whole story, as well as the diehard Gin Blossoms fan. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I'd love to get your opinion either via iTunes review or you can reach out to me on social media. Thanks for listening. Here we go. How you doing?
Hi. I'm all right, I guess. You know?
How's the weather out there in Long Island?
Well, right now it's beautiful, but it changes really fast here. You know, most of the time it's pretty gray and dreary. Wintertime sucks here. You know, and you know, being from Arizona, I miss the sunshine. But at this moment, it's actually quite lovely, and I've never seen the air so clean ever.
Oh yeah, that's true. I've heard that a lot. That the air is much better right now because of everyone being locked down and quarantined and whatnot. All right. Well, so you ready to get into this? I want to talk. I want to start at the beginning and tell your whole story. I think it's a fascinating story, even for someone who's a casual Gin Blossoms fan or doesn't know anything about your band. I think they'll become a fan after listening to this.
Well, one can only hope.
Well, if I do my job right. So you saw Queen on a show called Midnight Special when you were 8 years old, and that's when you decided that's what you want to do. You want to be a musician. And the first album you bought was Queen's Night at the Opera. In fact, you have the first line of Bohemian Rhapsody tattooed on yourself, right?
That is a true thing, yes.
And then your first concert was Cheap Trick opening for Kiss, which is also kind of cool because, you know, people think of Gin Blossoms, they might not think of that kind of music. Kiss is kind of more of a, you know, harder rock metal band, but you're kind of a metalhead at heart from what I learned from my research.
Well, I like all genres.
Yes,
truly. You know, I've always been a rock and roller, and you know, I really don't have any prejudice against any particular form or genre of popular music. My iPod has one of the most diverse collections of music of anybody on the planet. You know, so I'm really. You know, I'm into a lot of stuff, but basically I'm a rock and roller, you know. A band like Cheap Trick sort of defines most accurately, if I could only pick one band to explain to alien visitors what is rock and roll, well, I would probably just play California Man by Cheap Trick and say that pretty much sums it up, you know.
Gotcha. Yeah, you also, some of the other influences, Tom Petty, Smithereens, REM, The Cult, Replacements, Pixies, Guns N' Roses, Jane's Addiction, The Cars, and also you said you liked the Iron Maiden album Power Slave.
Oh yeah, that's such a good album. I was working at Tower Records when that came out, and that was when I really got into Iron Maiden and saw how awesome and unique they were. So you know, I've listened to a little bit of everything, you know.
So what age did you pick up a guitar and start playing? And then did you take lessons or were you self-taught?
Well, I was writing songs throughout my teen years, but I didn't really play an instrument. And it wasn't until I was 18 that I finally picked up the guitar and started plucking away. You know, I started with the Eagles' greatest hits songbook. You know, there's plenty of simple wonderful songs in there. So, yeah, it wasn't until I was 18 and, I was just a bedroom songwriter.
So how do you write
you know,
songs if you don't play the guitar? Are you saying you just wrote the lyrics, or do you like hum a melody, or how would you write the tune?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I would hum the melody. I would write the lyrics, and I used to record like that, just my voice singing into my boombox. And once my younger brother and all his friends discovered my tape when they were ditching school and smoking bongs, and I came home and I put on my tape to listen to it, and my brother and his friends had recorded themselves doing backwards masking, saying things backwards like Natas Bor, which is basically Satan, Rob Satan. And they used to, and every once in a while they'd say Nibor, which is Robin backwards. And so to this day, when I start a video game and you get to enter your character's name in a video game, I always use Bor. In tribute to my younger brothers and his stoner friends in high school.
That's awesome. So besides writing the music, you also, like you said, you worked at Tower Records, and you also worked at Zia Records, which is still around, and a place called Rockaway Records, which I'm not familiar with. But was it true you were fired from all three of those record stores, and how did you get fired?
No, but I like to exaggerate that I've been fired from every record store in Arizona, but I was only ever fired from Tower Records, but I do have the distinction of having been fired from Tower Records twice. So I got
the same location or a different?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I got fired, and about 6 months later, I managed to talk my way back into the job, and then about a year after that, I got fired again. So go figure.
Nice.
But what a great time to work at record stores.
Oh yeah,
back in the 80s. It was really a classic time. And before I got the job at Tower, my job before that was working at a place called Golf and Games. I don't know if you remember this joint. It was one of those castles with goofy golf and video games and bumper cars and stuff. So my teen years and my 80s experience was like a John Hughes movie.
That's awesome. Yeah, I worked at Sam Goody, but that was like super corporate, even more corporate than Tower Records. I actually like Tower Records. That was a fun place to go. It was like going to like Disneyland when you're a kid, all the records and movies and magazines.
Yeah, it was a pretty exciting place to work. And, the staff at any given Tower Records is always really diverse.
Yes.
And, I didn't get along with everyone because I was a, dickhead 19-year-old, with some dickhead 19-year-old ideas. But it taught me so much meeting all these different people, and everybody in the store had different tastes. So I was exposed to music I wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise. At first, I didn't really like reggae. They would put reggae on in the store, and I couldn't really get it. And then all of a sudden one day it just clicked, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see its value now, and also, they put me in charge of the folk, blues, and bluegrass section at Tower Records. And so I learned all this stuff about folk, blues, and bluegrass. And for a while I ran the classical section there. And so I was exposed to that music. And, all the while, because you work at Tower Records, we got a lot of free concert tickets. So,
yeah,
I was going out to Compton, Paris to see AC/DC, or out to Veterans Memorial Coliseum to see ZZ Top, or, there were always lots of shows. And then, of course, just cruising around town to the clubs like the Mason Jar.
Yeah.
I saw so many great shows at the Mason Jar, like Fishbone and Los Lobos, and Bo Diddley and Jonathan Richman, and then, tons of local bands and metal bands and, punk and a little bit of everything. The Mason Jar was a really cool spot.
And that's that's where you saw the Gin Blossoms. You knew Doug and Bill from high school. Did you guys all go to Coronado?
No, Jesse went to Coronado. Yeah, Doug and Bill and I all went to McClintock High
McClintock,
School,
okay. But
and
yeah.
I vaguely knew them. My younger brother was close friends with a guy named David Swafford, who was also a renowned local musician, and the Swaffords hung out with Doug and Bill, so I was aware of them and I was aware of their records. My brother was bringing home uh, stuff by the Psalms when they were first releasing their records, which was Doug and Bill, one of their first bands. And then Bill started working at Tower Records.
Right.
And I already kind of knew him, but then he got a job at Tower Records, and so we got to know each other a little bit better at Tower. And actually, I was working across the street at Zia behind the cash register, and the phone rings, and it's Bill over at Tower Records across the street, and he asked me if I wanted to audition for the Gin Blossoms.
Right, but before that, you had seen them perform at that Mason Jar Club, and it was actually on Christmas, and that was when Jesse was the singer. You weren't in the band. Did a lot of people show up for that first show?
Well, it was, if I remember right, there were probably about 50 people or so.
Wow, that's a lot for Christmas.
Yeah, Doug and Bill were relatively well known in the local music scene, and so people who followed the local scene were excited to see what their new band was all about. And I was actually working that day at Zia Records. We were open on Christmas Day until 9 p.m. And we locked up the store as quick as we could at 9 o'clock, and we raced down to the Mason Jar to catch the Gin Blossom show. So that was Christmas '87, and I was in the band in the first weekend of March.
Okay, and then you and Jesse switched places. You started as a rhythm guitar, but then you started singing one or two songs, and then they finally had you switch and made you the singer. I thought that was interesting because, there wasn't like your ego was like, I should be the singer. They told you like, you're going to be the singer. Like, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, I was really out of my league as a guitar player. So that, it was my weakness as a guitar player that led to my becoming the lead singer as much as anything else.
Yeah.
But I had always wanted to be a lead singer. I was very relieved when they switched me from rhythm guitar to lead singer. And, I was just fortunate to, really find what I was meant to do in this world.
Absolutely. So then you guys played a lot. You played at Long Longs, which I found out is sad that the original location where you guys played isn't there anymore. But you did like 165 shows in a year. You played at a place called the Sun Club. A lot of clubs in Tucson, Flagstaff. And was this the same time you were studying at ASU in physics and geology, right? Still doing 4 or 5 shows a week and working at the record store?
Yeah, although I didn't go to ASU, I was going to MTC at the time. My dad was a professor at MTC, so we got free tuition.
Oh, nice.
So I was at MTC for 5 years actually, but you touched on something that is pretty amazing. That at the age of 23, I can't believe how productive I was.
Yeah.
And so I was working 30 hours a week at Zia. We were playing 4 nights a week in the band. I was in school full time, taking things like chemistry and calculus and physics, and then when none of that was happening, we were going to shows. We were going out and seeing other bands, and chasing girls, and taking acid in the desert, and it was just nonstop action.
Yeah. And then, so you guys continue playing the Gin Blossoms, and then you got noticed at South by Southwest, the legendary music festival in Texas in 1989. And I read that you guys got set up with these monthly showcases in Hollywood. And so you'd have to drive to California like once a month and do these showcases at the Coconut Teaser. And you even did one with Rage Against the Machine. So you did that for like a year or 2 years? You'd go every once a month, drive to California too? And then how did you pay for a hotel or sleep in your van, or how did you swing that?
Yeah, we got hotels somewhat, but we had a friend. Our friend Tom DeSavia was, at the time, he was the vice president at ASCAP, and they were the people that we befriended in Austin that first time. And the ASCAP showcase at the Coconut Teaser was a weekly event that they were doing to try and help people get signed and to promote their business. And so we would sleep at Tom DeSavia's house. There'd be like 4 of us sleeping on the couches and the floors and stuff. And we spent a lot of time at the Roosevelt that year. We spent a lot of nights at the Roosevelt in Hollywood. And
that's a cool hotel.
Those were, they were really exciting, romantic times, and you kind of, when you're living it, I mean, of course it was fun and it was exciting, but it's only with the perspective of time that you realize how often it was, just exactly how sweet a situation it was, and how what we were accomplishing and what we were learning and what we were becoming. It's a very, very special time.
Yeah. And you recorded around this time, 1999, you recorded your first album, Dusted, which I listened to yesterday, and it had some early recordings of Hey Jealousy and Found Out About You. The band almost sounds like a little bit punkish, definitely less poppy than the next few records. Would you agree with that?
Well, we were raw, for one thing. We were undisciplined. We weren't working with world-class producers. And, the sound of the band was pretty well formed, but we were just very undisciplined in the studio. And it wasn't until, we did it a few times that we began to realize, okay, we got to slow down when we go in the studio. We're always forgetting to knock the tempos back a little bit. And, Dusted was virtually recorded live.
Okay.
So, we, as the budgets got bigger and the producers became more world-class, we just evolved,
Yeah. So, and this time you guys were drinking a lot, and obviously Doug was drinking a lot too. In fact, that cost him his girlfriend, Kathy. But the positive of that was that you came out with that song, Hey Jealousy. And I thought that was interesting. I didn't know that originally the line was said, "You can trust me not to drink." But you were just so sick of singing songs about drinking that you said, "Can I change it to You Can Trust Me Not to Think?" And how come you didn't get a songwriting credit for that?
Well, because Doug was not into sharing songwriting credit, and he was very competitive, and he looked at me as like the new guy who wouldn't even be there if it wasn't for him. He used to say things like that to me every once in a while. You'd still be schlepping away at some record store if I hadn't come along, and it's like, well, you need me too, dickhead, Well,
yeah, I want to paint a picture of that, because this is kind of like the things that you're dealing with. You said in the early days you guys mostly played Doug's songs, but when you played one of your songs, if they were playing one of the songs that you wrote, Doug would leave the stage in the middle of the song, like to go get a beer or something.
Yeah, he would. I don't remember him leaving the stage so much as just kind of stopping playing, and he would just stop playing his guitar and walk over and get a drink of his beer, and he would sort of pick it back up again when he felt like it. And this was his way of distancing himself from my songwriting and sort of proclaiming to everyone his superiority or whatever, And the fact is, he was a better songwriter than me, and I don't think I'll ever be as good a songwriter as Doug was, but I had so much more potential than he was willing to give me credit for it. One of the things that upsets me the most when I think about Doug is the lost potential of what he and I could have done together.
Yeah,
and I know in my heart that if he could see me now, he would be incredibly proud. So it's painful to think about those things, but it happened. It's just that's my life. So
Yeah, you co-wrote a song with him called "Hold Me Down," and he said that even if he liked you, he'd give you half of the credit for that song. And you remember the whole band was standing there, and it's symbolic of how like misdirected his anger was at that time.
yeah, it really was. It was a pretty shocking moment. You know, the whole band was there in the studio with our producer, and Doug he was really struggling when we were in Memphis to record New Musical Experience. He was really struggling, and yeah, he was lashing out at me, and you know, like I say, it was a tough time.
And when he kind of said that, they asked him, they were, trying to get him to do his solos. And he said, well, I guess I'd rather just have Jesse do the solos. That's kind of when you knew it was kind of the breaking point, that he was just kind of giving up. And you said you left the room and you almost threw up. So it was kind of around that time that you knew you had to fire him. There really wasn't any other choice. You were very close to him. And I heard a really, really good quote from you about Doug. You said that he didn't have the strength to be kind to me, because it sounds like you were really still trying to be kind to him, and you wanted it to work, but you'd be kind of enabling him if you didn't fire him. Right. And also would ruin the whole band probably.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to know exactly what would have happened if we had done something else, but we felt trapped, you know, and
Sure.
we just didn't really know what else to do. We didn't have the life experience to know what our options really were. And you know, for a while I tried to get Doug back into the band,
Right.
and this was all during the time that he was going around Tempe like bad mouthing me and telling people that I was stealing from him and stuff. And I was, you know, I was fighting for him, and
Yeah.
you know, I wanted him back in the band, but it couldn't work. And it was an incredibly painful time. You know, my friends, the Black Moods. Apparently, they're on the cover of the New Times right now,
Yeah.
or
Love
this
those
week
guys.
or something.
Yeah.
And so Josh called me last week, and he's like, "Rob, we're going to be on the cover of the New Times," and I was like so excited for him, and congratulations to the Black Moods for that accomplishment. But I told him about one of the times that we were on the cover of the New Times, and there was a quote in the article from Doug, and it was one of those quotes that they printed out in really big letters in the middle of the page. And the quote from Doug was, "Robin Wilson is a coattail riding son of a bitch." So
Wow.
that was the message Doug was putting out in those times. And you know, I don't know, I don't want the whole interview to be just a bunch
No,
of
no,
negative shit
no, no,
about Doug.
no. But I also want to clear up a misconception, because he said that you guys ripped him off and all this, but the truth is he signed away his publishing royalties for $15,000. That was and actually it was more like the record label kind of pushed him into that, right? It wasn't you guys having to do anything with that.
No, not exactly. The publishing deal was separate from any of that. It was something that it's something that we pursued and we're happy to get. But what happened was that we needed Doug to sign away his rights to the Gin Blossom's name, and what we did was we God, I don't know if I'm even allowed to talk about this.
Okay.
But we just,
that's okay.
You know, you know what actually happened was our lawyer suggested we withhold some of his royalties until he signed this paper. So we didn't actually ever get his money or take his money. We just withheld some of it until he would sign these papers. It was the only leverage we had over him. And then we did, you know, like each guy in the band got a couple of points on the record, and we gave one of Doug's points to Scotty Johnson, because Scotty was the one that was going to be out there like playing every day and working to make the record succeed.
Right.
So we felt that he deserved, and he rightfully did. So you know, it was all God. It's all so painful.
Yeah.
And it was just such a terrifying time. And you know, we were under such immense pressure, you know, just
Sure.
these green lads, you know, just trying to figure our way through the whole situation. And, you know, I just, like I say, I miss him so much. I just wish that, you know, things had been different. And, you know, nobody ever wants to fire the most talented guy in the band. Nobody wants
No.
to fire anybody.
I thought it was
You know?
interesting that you said that you wish there was a way that he could stay kind of like a Brian Wilson type character where he's part of the band and write songs and record, but maybe just not go on the road, because you knew that him on the road was not going to work.
Yeah, he would have been one of those guys that would have been like peeing in the hallways at MTV and stuff like that. But you know, like I said, let's move on from all. I don't want people to think that I spend all this time just you know, pissed at Doug or wanted to grade him or whatever.
But let's go back to the story. So anyway, so then Doug is kicked out of the band. You guys finished the record with John Hampton. In '93, you made a deal with a college magazine and did a college tour. And you're doing radio in the morning. You're playing college campuses in the cafeterias during the day, and then you're playing nightclubs. And it sounded like that was kind of a rough time. Like you guys kept getting sick and passing along to each other, and you're just doing you're just like overworking yourselves. And then this is interesting. So a VP from your label had a conversation with a VP at MTV, and the VP at MTV said if you guys made a better video for Hey Jealousy, that they would break the band. And in May '93, you relaunched the video and single for Hey Jealousy, and that's when everything took off. But I heard you say you don't like the new video for Hey Jealousy.
Oh, I'm okay with it now. You know, I mean, it was just, you know, at the time it was kind of weird because I was posing with goldfish bowls and toasters, and they had me, you know, like they wanted me to sit on a swing and sing the tune, and I was just like, God, that's so corny. And you know, I called my manager over, and I'm like, dude, should I do this? Should I be on the swing? And he's like, it's fine, Robin, just fine. You know, don't worry about it. And I just trusted him. And you know, again, with the perspective of time, yeah, I really don't have any issue with the swing shot.
You're singing into a blender. Like, did they explain the artistic significance of some of this stuff, or were you just like, oh, it's just weird, they just want to do something weird? Or
they're just looking for you know, still life moments, you know, and we were filming a lot of the video in this house, and they were just using whatever props were on hand. And so, you know, I wasn't singing to the blender, but they wanted me to sort of lean in near the blender. And I was just like, you know, it's the first big budget video we had ever shot. So this was all new territory for us. And, you know, it's one thing when you're an alternative band and you think of yourself as this authentic rock and roll troupe playing clubs and stuff. And then the next thing you know, you're lip syncing to a blender, and it's just a weird transition, you know. Eventually I became much more comfortable shooting the videos, but I still sort of pulled back because I didn't want to appear like I was a big show off or you know, really vain or anything. And so there were moments we'd be shooting videos that I would just say, no, I don't want to do that, because I just felt like it's going to make me look like one of those self-absorbed rock singers. And, you know, I hate those guys.
Right. So at this point in '93, you guys are getting some success. How do people treat you differently? Like, do you start hearing from old friends and girlfriends that you haven't heard from in a while? Like, what changed for the success?
Well, a lot of things change. For one thing, you also get really busy, you know, where you're doing a lot of press and a lot of television and a lot of radio, and so you're being worked really hard. But again, with the perspective of time, we see that the full resources of our label were behind us through that period, and you know, it's a great position to be in. And you know, we were here's a good example. Once we were asked by our label. We were going to go visit this radio station in New York, and we were exhausted, and we get down there and we find out we're not going on the air. What we're going to do is perform for all the employees in their lunchroom while they're having lunch. And I was so pissed off about this. Just like how dare they force us to, be their like singing monkeys, to try and impress this radio station. And, but what ended up happening was the station added us into their rotation at this crucial moment where the record was beginning to break. And so again, I was upset at the time, but now I see how the label was fighting for us.
Right.
And they were truly dedicated, and they were marshaling all of their resources to try and break the band and give us a big time music career. And it worked.
Mm-hmm. So you go out, you go on tour, your record's very successful. Then you come back. Meanwhile, not to go beat a dead horse here, but going back to the Doug thing, at this point, Doug is not doing well. You see him at Long Wong's. He calls you a thieving son of a bitch, punches you in the face, and that's the last time you see him. And then he always dreamed of having.
That wasn't the last time I saw him.
Oh, that wasn't okay, but that was towards the end. He had dreamed of having the gold record. He got a gold record for the Hey Jealousy song. He hung it up for 2 weeks and smashed it. And then 9 days later, sadly, he had an intake consultation at Phoenix Hospital, but he snuck out. He bought a 38 caliber pistol and shot himself and died by suicide. And that's obviously a huge moment for the band.
Yeah, those were very dark times. We were so busy, we were working so hard, and then we'd come home like 1 week out of every 2 or 3 months, and we'd get home, and it was strange. Either people were really, really excited for us, or there was this whole camp of people that were really negative and that really hated us, and that had bought into Doug's version of what had happened. And so for a while I was like the most hated man in Arizona. It was a weird thing to show up at my old hangout and for there just to be this buzz in the room. It was a strange time, but there was a moment in there where I got together with Doug. I had a friend call him and say, I told him I really want to talk to Doug. The label is talking about releasing Found Out About You as the next single, and I don't want to support it if Doug isn't into it.
Yeah.
And I want Doug's support to release Found Out About You as a single. So I called my friend, and within like an hour, Doug showed up at my house. I mean, he was really anxious to see me and to talk with me, and we had a pretty intense conversation, and it was hard, it was sad, but it meant a lot to me to be able to talk with him. And I told him, Found Out About You is they're talking about this as the single. If you don't want us to put it out as a single, we won't. I won't support it. And I remember he said, well, you have the band. He says, all I have left are these songs. That's my legacy. So I do want you to release Found Out About You as a single. So I think that might have been the last time I saw him. No, there was one other time. I was at a club called Edson's Attic down on Mill Avenue, and I bumped into Doug, and I was chatting with him outside the club, and then right then Lawrence Zubia showed up and sat down with us. And I remember Doug looking back and forth. He was sitting in between me and Lawrence, and he looks at Lawrence, he looks at me, and he looks back at Lawrence and looks at me, and he just kind of chuckled to himself, and he was like, Jesus Christ, what a triumvirate. And I'd never heard that word used in conversation before, but there he was sitting in between the two guys that he needed as lead singers. And it was a pretty special moment for me to be sitting there with Doug and Lawrence at the time, and it's one of my favorite memories. And so that may have been the last time.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so, you know, as big of a tragedy as that is, I mean, life does go on. You guys need to move on. You do a song for the Empire Records soundtrack. The song is a huge hit, Till I Hear It From You. And it's written by you and Jesse and Marshall Crenshaw. This is interesting. I heard the girl that wrote the movie, she worked at Tower Records in Phoenix. Now you worked at the Tower Records in Tempe. But do you get invited to like the movie premiere, or do you have any interaction with the cast or the promotion at all? Or it seems like a lot of that stuff is very disconnected.
It is. No, we weren't invited, or maybe we were invited to the movie premiere and we just couldn't go because we were doing shows or something.
Sure, yeah, you're busy.
That was also, you know, like my friends were really curious at the time. Wow, did you get to meet Liv Tyler? And I'm like, yeah. No, you know, we filmed our scenes in a different state,
sure,
from any of the cast members. But you know, it's cool that, you know, that movie is really a part of the times that we were living in, and is sort of a cultural touchstone in a way, and that, you know, our song is, you know, a big part of, you know, what was happening at the time. So
right. Well, and you guys,
you know, also I would say this, that the pressure that the label put on us to write a hit song, I mean, it was really tremendous, you know, coming out of your debut record, multi-platinum success, and then they're like, all right, go write a hit for this movie. And they're like, all you know, your song, whatever it is going to be like the main song of this movie. Go write it.
Yeah, well, that's interesting.
Terrifying.
Yeah, well, they also did the same thing with your next album, Congratulations, I'm Sorry. So the record was done, and then the record company came to you and said, no, you're not done. You need to go back in there and write a hit song. And that's when you went back in and wrote Follow You Down, which did become the biggest hit on the album. But how do you force inspiration for a hit song under that kind of pressure from the record company? Like, don't you have to be inspired as an artist? Like, I mean, how do you just, okay, I'm going to write a hit? I mean, if it was that easy, I feel like a lot more bands would be doing that.
Right. Well, you know, all I can say is that we tried, you know, that we were given instructions, and, you know, we went out swinging for the fences, you know.
Well, home run. I love that song.
Yeah. Follow You Down is one of our greatest moments as a band, because, you know, again, we were facing all this tremendous pressure, and, you know, we were unsure if we could make another hit record without Doug.
Yeah. And you did it.
You know, so it was, yeah. So that's why, again, I look at that as maybe our most triumphant moment.
It's very cool.
As a band. And then just, you know, like a few months into the album, you know, we were on Saturday Night Live playing that song.
Just going to ask you about that. So because you did the SNL in '96, and they had some of my favorite SNL, Norm Macdonald, David Spade, Jim Brewer, Will Ferrell. Did you get to hang out with the cast at all? Or were they funny behind the scenes? Do you have any interaction?
Yeah, actually. Yeah. At the time I was friends with the director. Her name is Beth McCarthy Miller. And she was a former MTV director. And Beth was really close with my ex-wife, Jenna. And Beth helped get us on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were on in March of '96. And it was so cool. Beth, I'm coming down the hallway, and Beth is walking towards me with Phil Hartman, who was the host of the show we were on, which is just one of the coolest things that I can say in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And Phil, apparently Beth had told Phil Hartman that I was a huge Simpsons fan. So Phil Hartman walks right up to me, shakes my hand, real strong handshake, and he goes, Hi, Robin. I'm Troy McClure, and you
Yes.
may remember me from such educational films as Locker Room Towel Fight, The Blinding of Larry Driscoll. And my jaw hit the floor.
Wow. That's
And
super
then,
cool.
yeah, I remember hanging out with Spade in the dressing room, and then at the end of the night, Phil Hartman came into our dressing room, and he's like, "You guys want to smoke a joint?" And we're like, "Fuck yeah!" So we're
Wow.
smoking a joint with Phil Hartman in the dressing room, and he told us a story about the time that he was a roadie for Hendrix. So,
Wait, is that a true
uh,
story?
yeah, true story. He apparently was a roadie
Wow.
for Hendrix for maybe it might have just been one show, but he was like a
What?
stagehand,
Huh.
and apparently the drum set started like sliding off the riser in the middle of the show, and so Phil Hartman had to go out onto the stage during the song and like hold the drum set in place. And
Wow.
he says in the middle of the solo or whatever, Hendrix looks over at him and gives him this look like, "You're rocking now, roadie man."
Wow, that
Yeah,
is a cool
and
story.
yeah, and of course, a line like that coming out of Phil Hartman
Yeah.
while you're smoking a joint, and you were
Yeah.
just on Saturday Night Live. Uh, that's one of the best stories I can tell about being in the Jim Blossoms. That
Oh,
was
for
a pretty great,
sure. Well,
great night. So.
another highlight you guys had that 96, you were nominated for a Grammy for the song As Long as It Matters. Now, my question for that is why did they pick that song, do you think, as opposed to some of the other songs that got, more airplay that were bigger hits? Is it complexity in the writing, or like, I don't understand that kind of stuff. Why did they pick those? Do you have a theory on that as to why they picked that song?
No, I couldn't say. I mean, it was a top 40 hit. It was the second biggest hit on the record as far as airplay goes. But I I don't know. It seems sort of random to me.
It is a great song.
And
Yeah.
the record companies, I don't know if they have like a meeting ahead of time and say, okay, I get 5 nominations and you get 5 nominations, and mm, here's my and I wonder if
Yeah.
they don't just behind the scenes sort of divvy it all up.
Yeah. That's really interesting. But then in 97, the band breaks up. What led to the breakup of the band? Was it just because you guys had just had 2 very successful albums in a row? I'm surprised that, the record company didn't somehow put a gun to your head to keep going, or, that like they're cash cow in a way, like, or you guys just burnt out
Yeah.
on the whole music business at that point, or
Well, I think we were mostly burnt out on each other,
each other.
and we
Sure.
were we were disillusioned with the band itself. And there was by that point we were full on in show business. Where
Mm-hmm.
we're lip syncing on television in Amsterdam, and it's just it was this grind, and we weren't all getting along, and you know I was I was just tired of the fight to make it fun. And one of our members was just so unhappy all the time, so unhappy, and it was just a grind being in a band with somebody who was just so depressed and negative all the time. And I finally, I can remember one night he was saying, just I'm going to pretend I broke my arm. I'm leaving the tour. Fuck it. I can't do this anymore. You guys can get somebody else. We'll just tell everybody that I broke my arm. And I told him, I'm quitting the band.
Wow.
And it just totally deflated his whole, you know, everything that he was upset about and everything that he was pissed about. It just pulled the rug out from under him. And, um, then a few months later, he and I got together, and he convinced me to make another record. He's like, why don't we keep it together and make another album? Let's try. And so I agreed to that. And then somehow it fell apart. I had agreed
Oh.
to come back and make another record. And I remember we were playing at the Arizona State Fair, And I asked the band backstage, you know, like, well, when are we going to make this record? And one of the guys said, nah, let's not do it. It's not going to be any fun. And I was like, okay,
Wow.
pressure's off me, you know, no pressure on, you know. So, yeah. Well, I went on to form
Gas Giants.
Giants.
Right. You guys had a single called Quitter, and you toured with Train. And
yeah, it was, you know, we had a shot, you know. It didn't work out. It was a tough time to be in a rock band. And, you know, we were signed to A&M Records. We finished the album. It was completely mastered. All the artwork was done. And then the record company A&M merged with Geffen and Interscope, and everything got put on hold. So our record sat on a shelf, fully mastered, for a year. And the whole time we were holding out that the management at A&M Records was going to get the reins of this new conglomerate. And so what ended up happening was basically they folded Geffen and A&M into Interscope, and Jimmy Iovine took everything over. And so all of a sudden, Jimmy Iovine is in charge of a label 3 times as big as the one he had last week. And so they had to start like cutting the weeds. So they dropped 300 bands in one day.
Jeez.
And Gas Giants were one of those bands, you know. So, but we got the record back, and we were able to license it from Universal Music, and we signed a deal with an independent label, and we hit the road. So you know, we took our shot opening for Train, and we did a bunch of shows with Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
I love him. Your song "Quitter" was also on the Boys and Girls soundtrack, that movie with Jason Biggs. It's kind of cool. And then you wrote.
We had a few moments where we got into the mainstream, but it just never fully happened. But while we're on the subject, I wanted to point out that I just re-released that record. It's available now in digital form for the first time ever. So you can hear it on Spotify and get it in the iTunes store.
I just downloaded some of the songs on iTunes. But so then around that 2001, 2002, you wrote a song called "Come On Hard," and your friend heard it and said, "That's a Gin Blossom song." And you guys were getting offers to reunite. So you decided to get back together with Gin Blossoms, right? 2002?
Yeah. And that friend was Lawrence Zubia, actually.
Singer
Lawrence was at my... Lawrence was at my studio, and then we were recording some demos of his, and I played him "Come On Hard," and he said, "Robin, that's a Gin Blossom song." And so, you know, that was kind of the final straw for me in terms of my willingness to, you know, and my desire to reunite with Gin Blossom.
Yeah, you guys did a few more albums after that. Major Lodge Victory, No Chocolate Cake. The latest one is called Mixed Reality, which I was listening to today. And it obviously you've talked about this before, but you really liked working with the producers for that one because Don Dixon and Mitch Easter, who did all the REM records, right?
Yeah, a fantastic experience. And it was kind of, I think, a really positive thing to have an authority figure like Don Dixon producing the record, you know, somebody that everyone in the band respected. And it was a great experience. You know, a hell of a lot of work. You know, making a record can be a pretty intense experience. You know, we were trying to get it all done relatively quick. So, you know, 12-hour days in the studio. Wow. Sometimes it's kind of like taking the bar exam, when you have to like focus so intensely for hours and hours and hours at a time, you know, but it was obviously all worth it. And Mixed Reality is, you know, one of our best albums.
I agree. Yeah, no, I mean, I like Face the Dark, Wonder, the single Break. It's a fun song. The video is cool. You got skateboarding in Arizona and puppies. I think the Break song almost sounds like a little bit like Roger Clyne. I know your guitarist, Scott, he ended up joining Roger Clyne for a little bit. Is there a mutual admiration there and respect with him? Like,
Sure. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Roger also a graduate of McClintock High School in Tempe, and uh, I remember the first time I saw the Refreshments down at Long Wonks. I was just so excited that there was another great band in town, and that our scene was growing and viable, and just it was a really exciting time in Tempe.
Oh yeah.
And so yeah, I've always had a great deal of respect for Roger.
Yeah.
And PH, PH is one of the greatest drummers on planet Earth. So
Oh yeah. Do you ever go to like the Circus Mexicus or the January jams or anything?
no, I never can.
Yeah.
I've never been, and I'm usually on the road.
Sure,
And
sure.
I do 100 shows a year. It's pretty rare when I want to go to a concert.
That's
You know,
true. I did hear that about you. Yeah.
if I'm not on the bill, I generally don't want to be there. And
Right.
it's just I'm sure a lot of movie stars don't go to the movies all the time.
Right. Yeah,
And
true.
I don't know, but there have been a handful of concerts over the last decade that I was really excited about, and that I actually went and bought tickets for. One of those was
The Darkness?
the Darkness at
Johnny
Celebrity
Marr?
Theater. And yeah,
Johnny Marr.
Johnny Moore.
Yeah, and
So,
some of the bands that you guys have performed with, Lit, Collective Soul, Sugar Ray, Everclear, Goo Goo Dolls, Alanis Morris, a lot of 90s bands, but you've also performed with like Styx, Loverboy, Charlie Daniels, Peter Frampton, ZZ Top, Neil Young. And did you guys open for Guns N' Roses in Portland in like 93? Is that true?
no,
No? Okay, must have read that wrong.
that is not true. The closest thing to that was our slot as the opening act for Melissa Etheridge and Bryan Adams when we toured Europe, and we played soccer stadiums across Europe opening for Bryan Adams. That was a pretty exciting tour.
So do you like performing better with the 90s era bands, or do you like the bands of other eras? Because it's obviously very different doing a show with Sugar Ray versus doing a show with Bryan Adams, right?
Well, I've always enjoyed, having up and coming bands on the bill. And there've been a handful of times where I've befriended the opening act and, tried to help them in some ways. There's been a handful of groups that we've become friends with over the years. Groups like Punchline is one. And there was a band from the Washington, D.C. area called Crash Boom Bang. And these were just such a great band, so much fun. And I made a point. I began to recognize, when a band was really great and really had the making of success, and I would do what I could to nurture that. So there's probably been like 5 bands that I'd befriended over the years that were up and comers that I made a point to bring out on the road with us. And last year we had Punchline out on tour with us, and we brought the Black Moods out on tour with us.
Yeah, they're great.
And so I didn't have a great deal of power, but I wanted to do what I could when I recognized something special in some of these opening acts. So I enjoy that as much as anything. But it's probably the most fun to be when you're on tour with like 4 other bands with a package that's out and doing the same bill every night. You really get into a groove, and with that many bands around, there's generally more fun to be had.
Yeah.
And then they know other people. So like there was a show we did in Michigan on the Summerland tour. So Summerland was Marcy Playground, Lit, us, Sugar Ray, and Everclear. And no, I'm thinking of the next year. Okay, so on the Under the Sun tour, it was Fastball, Vertical Horizon, Gin Blossoms, Sugar Ray, and Smash Mouth. And Vertical Horizon had Richard Marx playing rhythm guitar for them.
What?
For like 3 weeks. Yeah, for like 3 weeks on that tour. And what was I'm blanking right now. The name of the guy, he's the rock singer who he was on American Idol, and he went on to like a really solid rock career. God, I'm blanking. What the fuck is his
Oh.
name? He just uses his last name as the moniker for
Oh,
the band.
the bald guy. I know who you're talking about, but
God, what the hell is
it
his
starts with a
name?
D or something like. I know what you're talking about. I forgot his
Oh
name too.
God, damn it! This sucks that I can't remember his name. But anyway, one night he showed up, and
Oh, okay.
I was drinking. Next thing you know, I'm drinking moonshine with him and Richard Marx, and it's like this is a pretty cool moment for me.
Yeah. No, that's very cool. Or is there any other
What
bands that you haven't performed with that are on your bucket list that you're like, oh, I really want to do a show with this band? Or
Well, I had always hoped to get an opening slot for Tom Petty. That would have maybe been the culmination of my childhood dreams. Or somebody maybe like a Cheap Trick would have been great to tour with Cheap Trick.
yeah, that
But
would have been really cool.
I don't really go out of my way to meet my idols. I understand that they're busy and probably not in the mood. And if they're on tour, they're probably cranky. So.
Are you aware of any of the other local Arizona bands? You mentioned the Black Moods. Are you aware of like Natalie and the Sweet Talkers or Eddie and the Getaway or some of these other emerging artists?
I've heard about Natalie and the Sweet Talkers, but no, for the most part, since closing down my studio in 2015, I'm not as in touch with what's going on there.
Yeah, so bands in Phoenix, you had that studio. It was near Four Peaks, and you actually had at one point you had like a secret doorway that went directly from the studio into the Four Peaks. Are you a big fan of Four Peaks? I know you like Four Peaks and Morning Squeeze. Is there other local Arizona restaurants like when you come back in town that you're like, okay, I gotta have this. I gotta go to this place.
Oh yeah,
what
absolutely.
Are your favorites?
Well, the one of my favorites was Restaurant Mexico, which recently closed down.
Oh,
but
no.
that guy opened up a place out in Mesa called Mr. Poncho's.
Okay.
So you can still get the exact same food that they had at Restaurant Mexico at this place called Mr. Poncho's out in Mesa.
Nice.
And so I eat there regularly. And then Tacos Chihuas is one of my favorites. So I eat at Tacos Chihuas almost every day. And
where's that? Is that in
Mountain,
Tempe or?
there's one in Phoenix and there's one in Chandler.
Okay.
And best tacos in town, just incredible. I discovered it by accident once. I was just driving around Phoenix and did a quick Google search for tacos, and I found this place. And I walked in, and you could all over the walls, all the plaques: "Best of Phoenix, Best of Phoenix, Best of Phoenix." And I'm like, shit, I'm onto something here. So Tacos Chihuas, and out in Scottsdale, I like to go to the Mission.
Oh, that's a great place. Yeah.
The best margaritas in town, best chips and salsa.
Yeah, they get that guacamole they make at your tables.
Lovely place. I really like the Mission. So those are generally my favorites, and also Whataburger. I got to have a Whataburger when I'm.
Do they not have that on the East Coast?
No, we don't. No,
lame.
No,
you got Shake Shack over there, right? Though that's a good one.
Yeah. But I love a Whataburger, and they're probably only in about 15 states.
Okay.
So the Gin Blossoms, we get pizza every night after the show, and if there's a Whataburger in town, I always suggest that we get Whataburger instead of pizza. So.
Nice. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you're speaking of Best of Arizona. I mean, you guys are in the Arizona Music Hall of Fame. In fact, I read this article too. What do you think you'd get into the National Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I read an article on AZ Central. They gave you a 1 in 10 chance of making it into the Rock and Roll Hall. I don't know how they came up with those numbers, but is that something you care about?
That's a real generous estimation, I think. No, I wouldn't expect us to get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They've got a lot of groups to get to before we qualify. But I'm satisfied with the level of impact we've been able to have, and that we've survived with our credibility intact, and our audience. So
yeah.
I'm not worried about being in the Hall of Fame. That ain't
Sure.
that ain't gonna happen,
Right.
you know. But,
Well, you guys have some shows scheduled for coming up pretty soon. Do you think those will be rescheduled or canceled, or what do you think you'll do about them?
they've already, everything has already been. A handful of shows have been rescheduled for the fall.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think they've officially canceled our summer tour yet, but I'm sure. I don't see it happening.
Yeah.
I believe that the last thing I heard is that they're just going to try to move the whole tour to next year.
Okay.
So that's ironically called the Last Summer on Earth tour, and the headliner is Bare Naked Ladies, and we're out there with Togo X Sprocket as well. So that is going to be a really great tour when it does happen, and I think we've got a real chance for it to be a smash success, because it's I think it's going to be less of a risk to put on a show with like mid-level bands like us, as opposed to going out and trying to fill arenas with Lady Gaga or whatever.
Right.
Those shows are so much more expensive to produce. So I would think, I got a feeling that mid-level groups like us are going to do really well when this finally does go back to something along the lines of normal. But at this point, there's no guarantee that there's ever going to be a normal again. There's at this point, there's no way to predict how people are going to behave. I can already see passing around joints and shaking hands. That shit is over. The world is going to be fundamentally different when this is all over with. And I heard somebody saying how after 9/11 we just learned to well, you got to take your shoes off at the airport now. And, there just became things that became the new normal, and that's going to happen in this case too, where there's certain things that are just never going to be the same, and there's a real good chance that concerts are going to be one of those things that are going to be fundamentally different from now on. Really don't know.
I hope they find a way to do it. I've also seen possibly kind of like drive-in movie theater, like a drive-in concert where everyone drives in their car and watches the.
Yeah, God, that would suck. Yeah, I mean, it's hard enough when you're doing a show and the audience is like 15 feet away from the stage behind a barrier. That it's hard enough dealing with that.
Yeah.
But you might be right. Maybe that's the only way to really do it anymore.
It's better than nothing. That's all I'm thinking. I miss concerts a lot. So.
Yeah.
And you're also.
I miss performing in them. So.
And you're also the lead singer of the Smithereens, or you're going to do some shows, and you guys might even do a new album, possibly.
Yeah. We're writing songs, and we're about halfway there. So,
nice.
If concerts aren't a thing, well, records still are.
Yeah.
So, I had mentioned to my bandmates, if we're not going to have any income this year, then we need to release some stuff. So we're going to be mastering up some old demos and unreleased material that I've recently been able to dig up. And I don't know if you've seen the live streams that I've been doing.
Yeah, and you have one tomorrow at 8:30 on Facebook.
Yeah, and Scotty Johnson has one tonight. And my studio is built around a really great cassette 4-track. And so I was able to dig up all of these old cassettes of the band, and I've rediscovered all this unreleased material and shitloads of interviews and live concerts and things. So at some point we'll be releasing a collection of those things that I've found on cassette, and there's more than enough material for like a 12-song record.
Do you think that will? I mean, you guys have such a fascinating story to me, especially with all the Doug drama and all that. And I heard at one point there was going to be a biopic with Ethan Hawke starring as Doug. Is there any more news on that movie biopic? No. Okay.
No, I wouldn't want to see that. But one idea I have is to do a graphic novel.
Ooh, oh, that's right. You're a big comic book guy. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love someday to do like the definitive Jim Blossom story in the form of a graphic novel. I
That's
think that would
cool.
be really fun, and get like top rate, top tier comic book artists, like Andy Kubert or Todd McFarlane,
Yeah, Todd
get these guys
McFarlane
to,
lives in Arizona too.
yeah,
Very cool.
uh,
Um,
actually, I think you've probably heard that I've re-released the Gas Giants record. Yeah, we
yeah.
mentioned that earlier. I put together a video of a Gas Giants live concert that I found, and it was recorded at the Sport Rock Cafe while we were in limbo in 1988 or 98, while the album was just sitting on the shelf at Interscope. And we did this concert. And so anyway, I had it mastered up, and I put together a slideshow of photographs of Gas Giants that's going to accompany all of the songs. And some of the photographs in that slideshow are the Gas Giants visiting Todd McFarlane's headquarters in Phoenix, where we got a private tour.
That is
and
cool.
they swagged us out with all kinds of action figures and stuff. And I was a big collector at the time, and so it was really exciting for me to
Yeah.
get a tour of Todd McFarlane Productions, and actually two of his artists did the colors for the Gas Giants album cover.
Oh.
And anyway, so you're going to see photographs of Gas Giants exploring Todd McFarlane headquarters in this slideshow. And any day now, I'm gonna release that onto YouTube. It's ready to go. I was just waiting to find out when the Gas Giants record was going to be available on Spotify and the iTunes store and stuff before I did but as soon as I know that moment happens, I'm going to be scheduling a release party, and I'll do one of my live streams where I tell the Gas Giants story, and I talk about all the photographs that I use in the videos, and to play some of the music and stuff. So I'm going to be doing that sometime within the next week.
Awesome. So yeah, we got the Gas Giants. People can download all the Gin Blossoms albums, possibly new stuff with the Smithereens, and hopefully new shows at some point. I do like to end with a charity, and I know that you work with the Love, Hope, Strength Foundation, which this is really a great thing. They're building oncology centers like in third world countries, and you do these hikes with musicians. You climbed Kilimanjaro twice, and you got to hike the Grand Canyon. And explain to me more about that.
Well, yeah, Love, Hope, Strength is a cancer charity. They support people who are battling cancer. So we've funded hospitals. And we've the main gist of the organization, what they accomplish most is finding bone marrow donors for leukemia patients, and it's a cool thing to do. They raise money by putting together these hikes, and you have to raise to be allowed to go on the hike. You have to raise a bunch of money for the organization. And so, yeah, I've been on some really amazing adventures with Love, Hope, Strength. We've been to Everest Base Camp in Nepal, and we've bought a lot of equipment for the cancer center there in Kathmandu. Last year, we went to Iceland, and we did the Grand Canyon the year before that. And as you said, I've been to Kilimanjaro twice, and we were supposed to go to Morocco later this year, but I don't think that's going to be happening anymore.
Right.
But it is a great organization.
Yeah.
LoveHopeStrength.org is a great organization, and anybody who can chip in, please do.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to promote while we wrap up here?
Oh yeah. The Poppin Wheelies record is also available. That was my concept album. I'm trying to create an animated television series about a rock band in outer space. And I recorded the soundtrack record long ago, and I've just re-released that as well.
Okay.
And I'm in the process of getting my agency to help me pitch it as an animated series to all the likely streaming services. And so
cool.
That also is available now through iTunes and Spotify. And I believe Friday night I'm going to do a live stream where I debut the Poppin Wheelies videos and tell the story
All
about
right.
that project. And for what it's worth, those characters in the Poppin Wheelies, it's a 4-piece rock band from planet Earth on tour in the galaxy, and all the characters are based on me and my friends.
Oh,
So
cool.
the singer is supposed to be an idealistic version of me at 19 years old. The drummer looks like Dan Henderlin, who was in Gas Giants. The bass
Oh,
player is based loosely on a couple of my friends. Um, uh, one of them being
fun.
G. Brian Scott of Gas Giants and Dead Hot Workshop fame. And the
Yeah.
guitar player of the Poppin Wheelies is based on Doug Hopkins, and
Oh.
he looks like Doug. His name is Otis, and that was Doug's nickname.
Oh.
So it's a really sort of retro concept, and it's just a potentially a really fun animated series that's like a throwback to Saturday morning in the 1970s. So
Awesome.
anyway,
Cool.
that's available now on Spotify and iTunes Store and all the other streaming services. And later this week, I'm going to be debuting the videos, and hopefully sometime this week, I'm going to
Very
be
cool.
pitching Netflix and Apple TV and everybody.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for doing my show. I really appreciate it. I felt like I learned a lot. It was really interesting stuff. Like I said, I think you guys have a great story and obviously a great band, good, great music, everything that you've created so far. So I look forward to more.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your time and the interest and the support. And I miss Arizona terribly. So please send all my warmest wishes out to everybody in Arizona. I just
Okay.
bought an Arizona flag. I'm
Nice.
waiting for it to arrive. I'm gonna fly an Arizona flag from my porch every day here on Long Island. And,
Oh, you know what? That's the one question I didn't get to ask. Why are you in Long Island? I didn't ever catch that. Why you moved to Long Island? Is it for the, your,
well, this is where my son lives,
okay.
and he needs me around to make him sandwiches and drive him places. So,
But he's a musician
he's
too,
18
right?
now.
You're helping him with
What's that?
music. He's a musician, right? You're
Yeah,
helping
yeah.
him?
He's a very talented guitar player. He's becoming a great singer. He can play drums. I'm teaching him how to record.
And you're teaching
And
him how to write as well, I heard.
yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
that's
So
very cool.
it's great to have a skill set that my son is actually interested in, and
Mm-hmm.
watching your child follow in your footsteps is incredibly rewarding. So
Sure, sure.
that's why I'm here. I'm an
Awesome.
Arizona guy on Long Island, and I'm going to be probably the only person in the state of New York flying an Arizona flag on their porch. But
Yeah, no, you stand out. That's awesome. Well,
yeah,
thank you so
indeed.
much for doing my show. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it, and definitely
It's been a pleasure.
hopefully be able to catch you guys play at some point.
I sure hope so too. Well, thanks again. You take
Okay,
it easy and
you
rock
too.
away.
All right, bye bye, Robin.
Bye now.
Such a crazy story that band has been through. I mean, I really think they could do a movie or TV miniseries. I mean, I'd watch that for sure. Make sure to follow Robin on social media or go to theginblossoms.net for more information about the Gin Blossoms music, their merch, and upcoming show dates. If those happen, I'm sure they will eventually. You can find the Gas Giants and the Poppin Wheelies music out there on the streaming services and things, Amazon, Spotify, iTunes, all that stuff. If you enjoyed this interview, let me know, either with a review or you can reach out on social media. Make sure to smash that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And who should I interview next? Let me know, because I don't even know who I'm going to interview next. I don't have anyone lined up. So thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day or night.